Hey, this is John Leon Guerrero. Joining us once again is a great ally of the show and just a great guy, John Krotec. He's the founder of GreenZone Hero, which is a directory of businesses supporting freedom. His subscribers get a variety of digital tools to improve their businesses and their performance. Businesses that are owned by or supporting of veterans, active duty service people, and their families. You can visit them at greenzonehero.com. And you can email John directly at john@greenzonehero.com. He's also the founder of Outta Combat Radio, where he hosts the podcast that tells stories of combat veterans, their capabilities, their struggles, and their victories. Pete's been on the show many times. We, of course, are supporters of his missions, and we urge you all to listen in. As always, if you like what we're doing here, please give us a 5-star rating on iTunes and subscribe to the show. If you're listening on YouTube, please subscribe and hit that bell to get notifications when we put up new content. And let us know what you think. Leave comments, tell us what you feel about the shows, and your thoughts on what we're doing. In the meantime, please welcome our guest today, sitting down with Pete and going really deep, our friend, John Krotec.
Lions Rock Productions.
This is Jay Moore.
This is Greg Proops.
This is Jordan Harbinger.
This is Dexter from The Offspring.
This is Nathan
This
East.
is Sebastian Younger.
This is Rick Marotta.
This is Stuart Copeland.
This is Mick Gillette.
This is Andy Summers.
Hey, this is Skunk Baxter.
This is Gabby Reese.
This is Rob Bell.
Hey, this is John Leon Guerrero.
Hey, and this is Pete A. Turner.
Hi, this is John Krotec from GreenZone Hero and Outta Combat Radio, and I'm here today on the Break It Down show.
And now, the Break It Down show with John Leon Guerrero and Pete A. Turner.
Hey, John. So this is a fun thing. So you've been on my show before, and everybody should go check out that episode. It'll be in the show notes. We just actually recorded me for your show, my second visit on yours. So we cried during your episode because we love each other and we care for each other.
That's true, and you caught me off guard there, but I know that if I can cry on the air with a buddy like you, it's about as real as it gets. And you caught me off guard, man, but you exposed my heart, so thank you for that.
Well, we need some of that stuff these days because it's really easy to hate someone and call them a Nazi and dismiss somebody for the rest of their lives. I've had a number of friends tell me that they've lost friends ever since President Trump has become president. And this is not an endorsement or an indictment of the president, but he definitely drives us all a little bit crazy. I do what I can, man, to make sure that I add joy into my conversations and try to spend time in fellowship with others. What do you do to stay well? How do you invest in the happier things for John?
Well, thanks for the question, Pete. I certainly don't break off friendships with people because they like somebody that I may not like. I can tell you that. I don't think that's a healthy behavior at all. I mean, that shows something far deeper. But, the question is a great one because now in this age of post-traumatic stress and traumatic brain injuries and concussive syndrome, self-care is so very important to getting well again. And I you mentioned tears. And I tell you, man, I'm 60 years old and I am not a crybaby, but I've had lots of tears the last couple of years since my traumatic brain injury back in 2012, which exposed a childhood sexual assault that nobody likes to talk about. So a lot of prayer, a lot of networking with people like you and friends that have been through similar circumstances. I kind of smoke and joke about it now, but it's not funny. Since I came out, I've had many men and women in decision-making positions tell me, thank you for having the courage to talk about it. I think talking about it is a modus operandi. But by the way, when I was 9 years old at Uncle Billy's house, this happened to me. And, the sad fact is that that's pandemic. But so a lot of prayer, a lot of reaching out to friends, some yoga's in there. I walk a lot. My wife and I spend a lot of time with our dog when we have the time. And then, trying to stay nutritionally sound. I'm a very blessed guy. My wife's from Virginia, and she learned at a very young age how to, fry oysters and chicken. And I get a home cooked meal like every night, which is, she's a big time vegetable pusher and that keeps me healthy. But the yoga and just trying to do things, trying to rewrite my story and all the negative beliefs that I've had about myself for so many years, over 4 decades. It takes work and I'm willing to do the work, but those those kinds of things.
Yeah.
I know it's a long answer to it, but anytime that we can, even like having the human element in the show just, 10, 15 minutes ago, and get all teary eyed. And when you told me that, being, working with us on Straight Outta Combat Radio, how much it meant to you because it helped to feed your family and to give you a drive and a purpose. Pete, I never looked at it like that, man, but you struck a nerve, and I can say the same thing back at you because you've given me so many great ideas, and you've given me purpose at times in the conversations we've had over the last couple of years, how to just keep going. And I've had similar thoughts, suicide ideation, and not that I would do it, but having a guy like you in the bunker with me, sharing stories and helping me to improve my game means the world to me as well.
Well, that whole, I've started, I've opened up on the suicidal ideation thing because, I can't fear it. It's my ego getting in the way of someone else's well-being, but everybody who I've talked to who's had your kind of reaction has that reaction because we have this same issue, whether they're civilian or military. People have this problem where they're like, and especially, as we hit our middle age now, we understand that the number is going up dramatically. Like we have a problem with this in our peer group. So I don't want, if my revealing it, if you talking about your sexual abuse helps someone go, oh my gosh, I'm not the only person. Oh wow, someone else feels like this every day. There's literally days when I walk out of the door, and I don't know what it is, but when I walk out of the door, I feel impending doom. I'm lucky that right now I have mechanisms to help me deal with that. And sometimes it's just muddle through that day, but I have a lot of tools and things set up so that I don't go any further than that. And then if I do continue to slide, I have fail safes below that, so that I don't get into an action phase. And that's why I'm like, I'm in no danger, but it doesn't mean that I don't deal with it every day. So telling that to someone, giving them potentially hope, or providing them the opportunity to have their own hope. I can't deny that to somebody. I just can't, not because I'm afraid to reveal my frailty and my affliction. I can't do it. I've got to let people know that, I feel it all the time.
Yeah, that's pretty powerful. I know that sexual assault is a tough subject for people to talk about, men and women. It's not a pleasant subject to say, but even for a guy, because guys don't talk about it. My introduction to post-traumatic stress started, before I was, 11 years old. And, when I should have been trying to decide which baseball team I wanted to be on, I was worried about affiliation and gender, and is there something really wrong with me? And how does, and because of the social stigma with that, guys and a lot of ladies too just don't talk about it. A lot of these high-risk behaviors that I carried on through college and even into the Army with some of the hardcore drinking that we did. And, it was all a mask to hide the pain. And, back then, at 28 years old, I'm not going to go to Pete in the military and say, hey, by the way, buddy, when I was this age, I was, this happened to me. People don't talk about it. And we need to talk more about these subjects of suicide ideation, because don't think for a minute that most people out there haven't thought about it at least one time in their life. And if they say they haven't, I would say to them, well, if you're comfortable with that answer, God bless you, because then be comfortable. But you know what? If people are uncomfortable talking about a subject, that's probably because there's something that they're not addressing within themselves. And I'm not here to point fingers, but let's admit it. We're human. We have frailties. Just because I'm a guy and I, doesn't mean that I can't break down on the Break It Down show. It doesn't mean that I can't reveal something that's very personal to me. And if you smoke and joke and laugh and point fingers, that's on you. I'm just trying to be real, and I'm trying to be authentic, and I'm trying to tell a story that may, like you said earlier, Pete, may be able to help at least one person. So if we can help one person on this interview today that's dealing with suicide ideation or sexual assault, I can assure you, you are not alone.
Yeah.
Because you have two Army veterans right here that have collaborated on some pretty cool projects, but we have those types of subjects floating around in our heads. And I know you personally, even though we haven't met yet, but I know that you really want to help people. And by doing this, we're helping each other and ourselves.
Yeah, and I guess one of the things that I try to do is I try to connect with people. I've got a pretty big network of people. It's wide, so it's not dense in a particular region, but I've got people in Florida like you. I've got people in Alabama and Texas and Utah and Missoula, Montana. So I've got people all over the place, and I do my best to poke and check in because it helps me, but it also helps them, and it just enriches my life. So I do spend a lot of time in fellowship with people that I love and care about, and that has always been the case for me, but the purpose now behind it has changed, and it's more about well-being, a combined well-being for the people that I interact with. And I don't have time to do it with everybody I want, but I do make a concerted effort to reach out and do that. You seem to connect with a lot of people. Is this by design that you're doing this, or is this how you talk about because you're always networking and engaging with new people. I'm always amazed at who you get for your show, Straight Outta Combat Radio. And I get to hear the interviews, so it's fantastic.
Well, thank you for that. I watch guys like you, and I appreciate, I don't know, I didn't know anything about podcasts, up until about a year and a half ago. And what I've learned from you has been phenomenal. It gets back to something that we talked about on previous episodes. And first of all, I feel very privileged that you would even take the time to have me on your show. And, 500 guests, I feel very honored. When I say that, it's not just blowing smoke. When I say something, I mean it. And, to be part of your library of other human beings that have similar stories or stories that may be more interesting, maybe less, I don't know, but they're all stories that need to be told. And you as the, I keep thinking of, Pete Turner, the Pied Piper of the podcast world, and he's not just leading us down the primrose path. He's giving us real value, and he's allowing us a platform for us to be human and for us to tell our stories. And don't think for one second that being part of the social network like that in the podcast world, it's so important. And not only do you elevate the podcast game, if you will, but you elevate the condition of the planet. And that's not just bunk. That's a reality, because you're allowing people an opportunity to connect, which is what we try to do on Straight Outta Combat Radio. And just like you, we've been able to elicit some very good content. And in that content, realize that the human condition affects all of us, and, we each got a cup of coffee. What's interesting, don't get me going, man, but it's been what is there, 8 billion people on the planet, and they're saying 75% of the people on this planet have been traumatized at least once. And trauma doesn't have to be disfigurement from an IED explosion.
Right.
It can be being bullied your whole life, or it can be a divorce or financial ruin. And the thing is that if you're not dealing with it, and you asked this question, Pete, and how do you self-care? Dealing with it is part of the self-care, admitting it and talking about it. And so the show is instrumental, not only in the story about what it is they're doing with their lives, but if they have an issue that they want to talk about. That is so powerful, man.
Yeah.
Pete, the Break It Down show and our show at Straight Outta Combat is, and this isn't an infomercial. We're not here to grill, hot dogs. This is a reality check. These shows make the world a better place. Storytelling is a college degree. The early human beings used to sit in their caves and tell stories. They did paintings, so I can't see you at home there in your den painting buffaloes and everything but you certainly can sit there and have a podcast show. You're doing the same thing that early mankind did in telling the stories of what this life is all about.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool. And even though it's the techno age, I get that. You come from a long line of storytellers, and I'm part of that too. So I'm feeling pretty good about that.
Good, man. I love it. Do you think, because DNA is such a big part of who we are and how we react to the environment, do you think that if you go far enough back that, our caveman ancestor, our Australopithecus was the guy who was painting on those walls? Like,
he had a little bitty head, didn't he? Something like that.
Yeah. But I mean, do you think that there's like a DNA base to this where we don't mind like we live an artisan life, right? And so I would like to make more money, and I do better and better every year at this, but I'm okay with whatever I get financially. I'll figure it out as long as it's enough, which I'm almost there. But I get to live this wonderful life as a storyteller now. I'm enriched in so many ways. I'll give you an example. Last week, Jim DeFelice, before he came on the show, and that show probably will come out right about the time this one does, he sent me his newest book that he wrote with a guy who was, and he's still alive, this guy, his name's Ray. He was a medic at D-Day in the first wave. And Jim sent me his book, my friend, and Jim wasn't my friend before the show. And so here's how you monetize a podcast. I have a friend named Jim. He writes books, and I get to have him on my show when he sends me his book. That's got value that I wouldn't trade for $50.
Well, that's real. You asked the question, is it DNA and genetic? Well, my answer to you is yes. And this is why I believe that to be true, because it's science. It's been proven throughout all the years. First of all, human beings are social animals. And everybody, whether they say it or not, we all want acceptance. We're all part of this herd mentality. Well, maybe not the herd mentality, which we know is a different thing, but we're part of the human race. And many of us, if we were to break it down here on the Break It Down show, many of us, we want to tell our stories. We want to be accepted by the rest of the people in the tribe, which is kind of cliche at times these days. But because, we don't look at as our human connectedness as being tribes. But at one time, we were all part of a tribe, and we all had a story, and we had a place in that tribe. And it's still somewhat the same. We've been split up because of technology, but it's all about acceptance. People want to tell their story, and you're giving them, and we're giving them a platform to do that. So I think it is DNA, and everybody's story. To me, it's interesting because we always find a connection. Something that you raised earlier in our thought process. We talked about the animosity that's out there and how fragmented everybody is and how much finger pointing is going on. And you might like the San Francisco 49ers, right? And I like the Pittsburgh Steelers, okay? And you and I could go to fisticuffs on which team is better. We might even remember games. Well, that play did this and this play did this, and we might flip each other off and storm off. And in that diatribe, in that interaction, what we have lost is the fact, our anger's blinded us. We've lost the fact that we both love the sport of American football.
Yeah.
And so if we could just take a deep breath, listen to these stories, find that connection. And you used to say this to me, there's like a sweet spot. And every time I interview somebody, there's like 10 or 15 minutes where I just get the real juice of what's going on. And that's what we're all looking for. We're looking for that connectedness where that person becomes so transparent. They tell you things they thought they would never tell you.
Yeah.
But you've given them that opportunity because, first of all, they trust you. And that's a big part of these podcast interviews. And second of all, your interviews on the Break It Down show aren't just blowing smoke. It's a good quality product, and you have had some phenomenal people, book artists and, and veterans and people anyhow, phenomenal. I'm happy to be here. You get me going, man.
Well, that's the point, right? Is to get you going. You're talking about this elevation of the conversation and when that guest takes off. And I was thinking, one of the things that makes the show unique is there's a lot of people that have a conversation, a chat, but they're not looking for that moment. They're having a conversation and I hear you do it too, because I edit your shows. But when I hear that thing and I circle back and I get into it and I get that person to crack open and they get lost in the moment, those are moments that not everybody has the capability to create in their life, whether they're just too damn busy. They got their kids with all their activities and they got to fix the door that they've been meaning to fix. And, it's like I'm able to give them some of that stuff. Like one of my favorite things, my buddy Paul, who I did the hot tub show with, when he and I have conversations, especially with other people that we used to work with, There were such high-level conversations. You were learning so much, and you were stretching, and you were trying to keep up with what was going on, but also contributing and doing the same thing to the people around you. I cannot get enough of these kind of conversations. That's one of the reasons why I have really smart people on the show, because it forces me to learn about quantum mechanics, and quantum physics. I think that gives the audience something in that they don't get to have those kind of conversations that have another gear. They're in a coffee klatch, they talk about whatever they talk about, and it stays fairly pedestrian. But these conversations really with real deep thinkers that find a new gear, I can't get enough of them.
No, you're absolutely right. And one thing that there's a lot of different issues here you bring to light, Pete. One of them is authenticity and transparency and trust. It all has to do with trust. And don't think for 1 second that people aren't listening, because your show, you don't do 500 interviews and nobody listens to it. I mean, come on, let's get real here. But the reality of that is that you give people an opportunity to do what? To be human.
Yeah.
And one thing that you've managed to do, and why you're on the forefront of this whole podcast thing, it's been around for a few years, but you have been able to bring a humanistic, nobody can do what you do, with these interviews. It takes a special person to interview another human being, but you've allowed people the opportunity to be human. And when somebody, you learn trust in the battlefields of Iraq, talking to Al-Qaeda people, when you can get somebody from Al-Qaeda to like you or to have trust in you, then this is a piece of cake.
Yeah.
And you have managed to make a very large cake, and you just continue to put more icing on it as you bring more and more people to the show, not only in people being interviewed, but in your listenership. And that is a tremendous value. I would have to say that the Break It Down show is a pioneer in humanity in the digital age. And I see a lot of shows get recognition, and that's great, and I'm so happy for them. But at the same time, I listen to some of those shows and I'm like, am I missing something here? And I'm not going to say anything, but you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Your show has an element of reality. You make reality TV shows look anyhow.
Yeah.
You're real, Pete. And that's why I love what you do. And that's why we've been working together, and you allow people to be human. So, the Break It Down show, humanity in the digital age, I can see that, that should be the marquee,
Yeah.
But that's the beauty of what you do, man. And it's greatly appreciated on this side for sure.
Yeah, John does a great job of coming up with marketing ideas. He talks about his, if you follow him on any of the social media, and you should, you'll learn about like what's your apocalypse and all these other concepts that he comes with. Task Force Zen, which is another show that he's working on developing. And we've had a few episodes come out. You're looking at bigger things. You're trying to change paradigms. You talk about that all the time. So let's talk about that. Talk about Task Force Zen and what you think it's going to be. I mean, obviously, it's one thing, as you know, it's one thing to say you're going to start a show. It's another thing to actually get that thing tuned and running, because it takes a lot of time and capacity. So talk about Task Force Zen and that whole paradigm shift you think is possible with it.
Well, thank you for that question. We're working on lining up. As a matter of fact, lining up more people to interview next week for Task Force Zen. Here we are in the 21st digital age, and I'm looking at you. We're on a Zoom call. We have audio going, and you're recording this. And, what I see is our ability, because of where our hearts lie, is our ability to build this network. And what we want to do with Task Force Zen is create a global network where we introduce healers with people that seek healing, but we also create an educational element so we can educate people on a massive scale about modalities, some of which we mentioned earlier. To me, Task Force Zen is another project to me that will benefit humanity at 50,000 feet. I've been very blessed to have a lot of people behind the scenes helping with that, you included, but we're going to add to that. And so, the What's Your Apocalypse is a personal healing journey. I'm calling it human prop therapy. It's still in development too. But I basically come out on stage dressed in post-apocalyptic clothing. That's what sexual assault, traumatic brain injury did to me. I mean, you literally can't see anything. I look like Mad Max.
Yeah.
And then the first thing I do is I lay down the weapon. Everything that I have, every prop, every bit of clothing is a negative behavior or a negative thought process. So when I lay the weapon down, I say, hey, you know what? You're not at war with humanity. You're at war with yourself.
Yeah.
And then when I take the goggles off, look at yourself in the mirror. When I take off the respirator, it's breathe. And as I strip myself down, sounds kind of funny, but I'm wearing a one-piece bodysuit of the human musculature. And then again, you mentioned self-care, and then I get dressed again.
This episode of the Break It Down Show is brought to you by Lions Rock Productions.
That's us.
We publish, evaluate, and develop podcasts just like this one, consult others to build their own, and create associated content and content marketing strategies.
So if you're launching or expanding your social media presence, your business or your personal brand, or if you just want to take your media presence to the next level,
reach out to us on Twitter
at P. Turner
or at JohnLG69
at the Break It Down Show.
There's 1,000 ways to get a hold of us.
Now enjoy the show.
And then again, you mentioned self-care, and then I get dressed again. And each article of clothing or accoutrement is some type of positive behavior or positive addiction. And you can have positive addictions. So that's a human healing project, human prop therapy, still in development. But I look at that to be something hopefully will take hold, and I'll be able to travel around with people and help them in that regard on personal healing. But the medium of these digital tools and podcasting to me is the best type of tool for people like us that like that. We really like the human connection. Mm-hmm. And in our desire to connect more, and this is why I love the show and the people you had on it, we become disconnected. What you've allowed us to do, Pete, with your show is you've allowed us to take those thoughts of disconnection and to really connect.
Yeah.
Because I don't know where you can listen to a show with two grown men, one a combat veteran, one a veteran, and I don't know where two grown men can talk about how much they mean to each other and have some tears over it and not feel that, hey, those guys are for real. You can't fake stuff like that. And you know what? There you go. The Break It Down Show. We're real.
I love it.
It's pretty simple.
We're real. One
real.
of the things we also do is we bring on people who are PhDs or experts in some way, and we elevate their message. So they write this paper and they write the book, and yeah, they get some traction, but there's so much more in there. Like if you take an idea, those 100,000 words it takes to write a book, it's a linear thought process. There's so much context and side stories and anecdotes. I love bringing those guys on to have them really flesh out what their idea is and really get into it and give them scenarios and have them tell us what they think about it. When you have experts on the show, you have all kinds of financial people, and these guys are all veterans. So what are you looking for? What are you trying to find with all of your expert type people?
Thank you for that question. It's something like you told me at the very beginning before we started working with each other. Look for the sweet spot. And I think I remember I said something. I said, what do you mean by that? Make them feel comfortable enough where they trust you and they will open up and they'll tell you that. So what I look for are people that are making, but everybody's making a difference, because even some of the privates that we've had, Chris Vetzel with Slippers of Light, was blown upside down in an IED, and when he finally came out of the haze, a sliver of light was coming through the dust.
Yeah.
And he said it was almost prophetic. Here's the sliver of life. And it gave me a hope to crawl out of the mire. And to answer that question is, I really am looking for the person being interviewed to relate in a human way that gives people hope. And so we use the concept of honoring freedom and honoring your wisdom as the glue that holds it all together. And what blew me away when you edited the last episode, where you went in and you took a dozen of our prior episodes and you took that one question, and when you pieced it together in such a coherent manner like you did,
yeah,
I never realized how the concept of freedom and what that means so many different things to different people. And I look for people with the willingness to tell their story and to leave a message of hope. So somewhere, somebody out there listening, doesn't matter where they're at, can connect with that. We're real.
All right, so let's spend some time here. That freedom episode, we had that idea, we talked about it, I put it together, and I was really happy with how the freedom stories worked together in a sequence. I'm glad that came across. When you heard that, though, what did you? I mean, you asked these questions. These people told these things to you, but when you have it in this new context, what did you pull out from that? I mean, what did you hear besides just the definitions?
Nice question. Thank you. I pulled out that everybody's different and we've all got a story to tell. And freedom is a responsibility and means different things to different people. And something that you talked about earlier was about tolerance. And what it made me realize, there you go, man. There's your mantra about tolerance. What it made me realize is that, gosh, these are some really decent human beings with different experiences from me. We all love freedom, but we all have a different perception of it. And I can't wait to you. I know it takes some effort, but there's proof positive of how the professional kind of work that Pete Turner does. But, I can't wait to hear the other 8 or 9 or 10 episodes. So we have those all compiled with freedom. So powerful. And it just made me realize that, holy cow, I live in a pretty fantastic country. And you started out that episode, which was even cool. You started out with the British combat veteran. And his analogy was, it's like being a parrot in a cage. Freedom means you can stay in the cage if you want, or you can fly out. And then we actually ended, I think, with tolerance and you about freedom. But in between, there's all these awesome definitions of freedom. That was a really cool episode. And I know you had fun doing it because you told me.
Yeah. Yeah, it was great to do. You guys should definitely check it out. Straight Outta Combat Radio. It's the Freedom episode, and actually, if you'll allow it, I'll feature it on my show, so people can go and click on it and go to it, because I think it's a great treatment on a half hour on what freedom is, at least in these 10 or so cases, and I'll share it with these guys because it is a great message. And I love the concept of freedom being a responsibility. Yes, it's an inalienable right, but you have to care for it, and that's not going to be as easy as you want. It's just like charity work. Sometimes when I'm doing service work, I don't want to do it. I would rather do something else. I'd rather take a nap. But I get up and I go do that thing, even if it's just making an appearance or, supporting someone else who's doing something bigger. You go out and you do that because charity is hard work. It has to be. Otherwise, everybody would fucking do it, You
got that right. It's kind of interesting that you say it that way because it's true. And, and when you start to hear how other people feel about freedom, it really gives it a different slant. We take a lot for granted. I was a small business owner for 23 years, and I climbed mountains in the Andes for a little over 12 years, and people would come into the store, and we sold hardcore gear and clothing for travel. And most people in the United States most people that have not traveled believe that the rest of the world lives like we do. Well, I got news for you. If you haven't been outside the country, even in some of the developed nations, it's not like we live here in the States. Right. And so the whole concept of freedom is such a legacy that, some people that they didn't just write the Constitution. It was well thought out, means a lot. And if you read it on its interpretation, there's something truly special about the United States of America. And I personally am very proud to say that I'm an American. I'm Croatian and Irish descent. And if anybody has any reason to be mad at the Brits or the Serbs, it's absolutely me but I don't. And because of my ancestors taking the chance to come here with nothing and to instill in me these values that America has, leads me to believe that anybody that comes here with the right mindset can be and whatever they want to be. And that's important for us to be able to use the mediums we have to tell that story. And you do it with Breakdown Show, and it's all about connection, and I love it. And the more I talk to guys like you guys, there are not many Pete Turners. In fact, there's only one, but you motivate the heck out of it.
Oh, thanks,
how can we do this different? You're asking like adding crickets here, or a motorcycle sound here, or a burning fire here, and it all adds to the quality of the show.
Yeah.
That's pretty significant too. You know, it's not just two guys sitting around a campfire talking about nonsense.
Yeah.
It's real relevant things that people want to hear.
I got a couple questions for you. I'm curious what you think. As a guy that runs a show, what's freedom mean to you?
Well, you know, freedom means to me, it is a responsibility. To me, freedom means that I've been given an opportunity to carry on a legacy. And as somebody that wore the uniform of the United States Army, you know, I'm not a combat veteran. You know, let me qualify that. But we were trained up and ready to go. And, you know, I did raise my right hand. It was my choice, my decision. One of the reasons I did it, because I thought if I didn't do it now, then when? And I don't think that I could be a citizen without knowing that I gave back somehow. And I did mine through military service. It may not be to everybody. You know, maybe you go and you give to your local Salvation Army, or somehow you give back through the community, or many other organizations out there that make America stronger. Freedom means a legacy to carry on, and a responsibility to use the skill sets that I've been blessed with from a much higher power to make it even better than I found it. And if we can, as friends and as business associates and just people, human beings and Americans that have worn the uniform, if we can help others to understand what freedom means to us, then we've done our job. And honestly, the United States is here to stay. We need to keep it strong. And that's why we use GreenZone Hero as a business networking tool to give people tools that appreciate freedom, an opportunity to elevate their own companies. I think that if we can keep America strong through storytelling and through helping businesses that actually care about freedom, then we're doing our job. And I'm so, you know, you and I would be on point, and, you know, it'd be great to be on point with you because we are, but when we come back, we reconnoiter, we have all this intel that we've gathered, and how can we go out and do it better?
When you talk to all these incredible veterans that you do on your show, you gather a lot of wisdom. I know you gather combat wisdom. What do you want people to know about combat veterans? By the way, for all my friends listening, I'm stealing the back end of John's show right now and doing it to him. So
you always do this to me, man. You know, I'm going to say, you know, you caught me off guard there, man. I'm going to say that combat veterans, regardless of what we read in the papers and in media, because there's always that question. Oh, was he in the military? Oh, was he a Marine? They're the ones that get picked on the most. Then it's the Army. Yeah. And for some reason, you know, the Navy and the Air Force gets really left alone. But, you know, we're not broken. And I shouldn't say we, but combat veterans are not broken. And what's interesting is I would rather consider hiring a 25-year-old E5 that maybe had $11 million of government issued equipment, you know, under his tutelage, and 6 or 7, you know, combat soldiers. That 25-year-old E5 who's coming home, he has skill sets that guy coming out of college. With all due respect, I have a college degree. Yeah. I didn't know anything coming out of college other than book work. And I love college. You know, go get your education. Don't let me poo-poo it. But I would rather hire or take a look at that 25-year-old combat veteran and his skill sets before somebody that's coming out that hasn't really been on the ground yet. So they're not broken. They're an incredible – our combat veterans, to me, are America's greatest legacy, because they are the heart and soul of what we're all about. They are men and women who reached down and grabbed them and held up their right hand and swore an oath to defend the Constitution of the United States of America, which you and I hold near and dear to our hearts. And that means a lot. When those people do that, they're in a special brother and sisterhood that you don't find anywhere else. And I can talk to a combat veteran or even a veteran from Korea or World War II or the Vietnam War, any of these deployments we've had over the last 16 years plus, and there is a common bond that will forever be there just because we wore the uniform, because we did it probably for very similar reasons. Combat veterans are not broken. Consider them as being part of your team. And if you train them and you take the time and you shed light on what their attributes are, you're going to hire somebody for your organization that is just going to make it be that much better. I could use some acronyms here, but I want to keep it clean.
Okay.
They can elevate your company more than you'll ever imagine. Just take the time with them and look at them and respect their position. They're human beings just like all of us, just with a different slant on life.
Yeah. I love it. What's your mantra?
Man, you're getting me today, brother. my mantra is this. And again, I think I made this one up a few years back when I was working with volunteers in my community. Polarization only works in sunglasses.
Okay.
It does not work in sustainable communities, doesn't work in sustainable organizations, groups, nonprofits, businesses. It just doesn't work, ladies and gentlemen. Polarization is the worst thing that we can have as the human race. I love debate. I love having differences of opinion. But when it forces somebody to say, Pete, you're not my friend anymore because you like Trump or whatever, when it does that, then it's an ill will to the society. So I would say, look at a way to respect each other and allow that person the opportunity, because it's their given right to be able to voice their opinion, and don't pass judgment and label them because they feel differently than you do. You're just as valuable and important, and so is your position, and theirs is. Why my position is better than yours is just not fair, and it leads to more problems than it's worth.
I like it. So tell us really quick about what GreenZone Hero is for those out there who have small businesses, because there's plenty of them, so they can be involved with what you're trying to do.
Thank you, Pete. GreenZone Hero is a online business network of companies that honor freedom by supporting veterans, active duty military, and their families. And they do it a few different ways: special pricing, or they hire veterans, or they're veteran owned, or they give to veteran nonprofits. But we're a B2B business. We give them actual tools. We don't just take money and run. We give you a manifesto. We give you a best practices manual. You get digital tools with URL links. You get digital logos, community outreach tools. It has been a blessing to see how many companies in America. There's 28 million. We have over 750, which means we got a long way to go. But there are still companies out there that think that freedom means a lot. And these companies have stepped up to the plate. They've spent the money with us. Many of them have renewed. They continue to join. We just got Chattahoochee Harley-Davidson up in Columbus, Georgia.
Nice.
Right there, right next to Fort Benning. They didn't even hesitate.
Yeah.
And so we're allowing companies to not only talk the talk about freedom, but if you really support freedom, then join us. Tell the rest of the world the great things that you do to help support those very men and women that allow you and me the opportunity to have a conversation in relative peace and safety. It's a long answer, but we're making an inroad. Harley Davidson is one of our biggest supporters. Boar's Head Provisions, Sam Ash Music. By the way, Sam Ash's father fought at the Battle of the Bulge.
Wow,
that's an incredible fact. And we got Mission Barbecue. I mean, if you haven't been to a Mission Barbecue, it's an East Coast company.
Yeah.
Every day at noon, they say the Pledge of Allegiance. Everybody in the restaurant stands up. It just goes silent.
I'm offended.
No, yeah, well, yeah. I'm gonna kneel or not kneel, but the thing is that when they get done doing that, if you're ever there, it's a special treat. It makes that brisket, which is my favorite Mission Barbecue meal, but it makes that food taste so much better. And I know that I'm at home because here's a company that has a core value that I resonate with.
Sure.
And, like we mentioned, Tabasco sauce, been around like 130 plus years in Avery Island. Companies like that, they are the very heart and soul of America. And what we want to do is we want to not only, Harley Davidson didn't need us, but they knew it was the right thing to do. And when they did join us, 75 plus dealerships across America. In fact, we're going to be up in Dothan, Alabama, doing some interviews with some combat veterans at the Harley Davidson dealership there. I know you're going to be doing some work in Missouri, but imagine if we can tell all these stories through these podcasts and through our company.
Yeah. I love it. Well, listen, I appreciate you coming on and sharing this time with me. It's just great to be able to have this relationship and tell these stories. And I get to hear the show in its raw form, and you have so many insightful people, and the vast majority of them say, get a hold of me. I'm prepared to help you. And I don't know a lot of shows that have people of that caliber on all the time. Yes, buy my book. These people are saying something different. They're saying, here's my email. Here's how you get a hold of me. Get a hold of me and I'll help you. I will connect you to someone. I will be your mentor. I'll put you in my mastermind group. All the time on John's show, these incredible people that are highly successful are offering help. It's incredible, man. You're doing great work.
And so are you, Pete. Thank you for that. Appreciate that a great deal. We're keeping it real like your show. And I my bit of advice to anybody out there, I know it's tough in the digital age to figure out who's real and who's not real, but keep going, just keep going. You don't know who that next relationship is going to turn you on to or how that's going to turn out. But there are people out there like Pete Turner and myself who truly, I'm glad you pointed that out, and like all the people that we've interviewed, that are real, they're authentic, they're transparent, they have stories to tell, and they really want to help you. So, yeah, it's real.
Man, well, thank you so much. Everybody, this is John Krotec.